Hi everyone, I'm Paul Kegabine here at the Garland County Library, and we are having our first in-person Historical Society meeting in 2 years, so welcome back. And this will also be our first ever blended program, so that means it is both in person with a live audience, and it's being streamed and recorded, so you can watch it live on Facebook and YouTube, and you'll be able to watch the same program you're watching today later, a recorded version. So with that in mind, please be mindful, live audience, of the background noise for those watching from home. And today's program features a recurring guest, Charlie Moore, who will get a formal introduction here in a moment, but he's a great partner at the library, and so is the Historical Society. And I'm about to introduce the Vice President of the Historical Society, Miss Biddy Martin, who has an exciting upcoming book that you might know about, Snake Guys. And she's going to be giving a presentation of her own as part of the Hot Springs Book Festival here at the library on Friday, April 8th. So please register for that. It's filling up quickly. There's a limited number of seats. Got a hot mic here. But give a warm introduction to Vice President Biddy Martin of the Historical Society.
Thank you, Paul. And welcome to our first meeting, like Paul said, since what, February of 2020?
19.
Was it 19? Oh my goodness. But it's great for all of us to be together. I know you're glad to be here. Cody, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm filling in for Julie Bruner-Nix, who is the president. And she couldn't be here today, but I know if she were here that she would like to recognize our new corporate sponsors, who are Quapaw, Bass and Spa, National Park Gifts and Souvenirs, AT&T, and Myers Realty. Now, you've all received the minutes, and if you've had a chance to look over them, we will approve them as read. If there are no corrections, thank you, Liz. If there are no corrections or additions, we can approve them. Yes.
I have one correction. The person from the library last month that introduced, welcomed us, was Shannon Emmons.
Okay, thank you. We'll make that correction. So is there any others? Okay. So they'll stand approved as read. Thank you so much. Now, Liz, our executive director, will be up here to speak to you. Liz?
Thank you, Biddy, and it's wonderful to see all of you here today and welcome you all viewing from home. I'd like to tell you, because I know you're all history fans, about a couple of upcoming events that I think you'd enjoy. Tom Hill, the curator of Hot Springs National Park, and Mary Bell Hill, the author of the excellent book, Hot Springs National Park, are going to teach a 4-hour class at National Park College on the evenings of April 5th and 7th. It includes, Tom said, just tons of wonderful, fascinating photos of the park's history. You can sign on for this course by going to the National Park College Continuing Education page. There is a small fee, but Tom promises you don't have to buy a book and there's absolutely no homework. Also, history fans, we can celebrate Arkansas Archaeology Month. Maybe I should learn how to say it, which is the month of March. If you Google Arkansas Archaeology Month, you'll find a wonderful calendar full of events sponsored by the Arkansas Archaeological Society and the Arkansas Archaeological Survey, including my favorite, a virtual artifact day, during which archaeologists online will look at and identify artifacts for people who log on. So let's all take part in that. And especially, let's all be here on April 19th for our next society meeting. That's the third Tuesday in April, when our own Biddy Martin will give the program about her much anticipated book, Snake Eyes, Murder in a Southern Town, which is being released by Prometheus Press on May 15th. The book is about the mid-1960s murders at Black Snake Ranch and Redbird Laundromat by a killer who terrorized Hot Springs for decades. The ranch owner tried to cover up the murder of the Black Snake victim, who was a junior high friend of Biddy's. As she says, this story's been waiting a lifetime to be told, but we can hear about this story right here, April 19th from Biddy. Now, today's program is In Search of the Ouachitas' Lost Music, and it's being given by an old friend of the society and a great friend of local history, Charlie Moore. Charlie began his old-time music journey in 2016, focusing on the roots of American rural, mountain, and homemade music prior to radio or recordings, and he found little or no record of Ouachita mountain music and has begun preserving the few remaining resources in those mountains. He's a founder of the Arkansas Highlands Folk Project and a member of the Arkansas Highlands String Band. Charlie's an Arkansas native, a U of A graduate, and a U.S. Army veteran. He moved to Hot Springs in 1990, joining Worthen Investments. He retired in 2016 from Merrill Lynch and continues to consult with his former team at Becky Comstock's Raymond James office. He's a wonderful speaker, and I know you're going to enjoy his program. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you. Okay, it really is a privilege to be the first live person here, and also I wanted to thank a couple of people too. The newspaper always gives us great support. The Historical Society, Liz has always been great about sending out our news to you guys, and I think this is the first time that we've actually made this presentation. But just to start, the title of my program is In Search of the Ouachitas' Lost Music. And there's plenty written about the Ozarks. I mean, the Ozark Folk Center has preserved that in a wonderful manner, and there's lots of books that have been written about it. But when you get down to the Ouachitas, there's very little that's been written. I would like to, back to the newspaper, I want to, just so you know what you're getting into, in the newspaper, they said the program explores the music's journey from the Appalachians to the Ozarks and Ouachitas and examines why little of the music is preserved in the Ouachitas. Now, one of our preservationists here, Terry Diggs, has been preserving the music in Bonnerdale and the stories, and we've all heard his presentation, and that's always a joy to listen to that. I'm digging a little bit deeper and a little bit further back. But before I get started with the actual program, this is not a lecture. Hopefully this is a conversation, and you can break in anytime with a question, or if you have something to add, we want to hear that. But before we get started, Liz Colgrove with the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance is going to step forward, and we're going to talk a little bit about an event that's going to come up in a little over a month that will give us an opportunity to present live old-time music at Hill Wheatley Plaza. Liz, come on out, take it away. This mic here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Colgrove. I'm with the Hot Springs Area Cultural Alliance, and I'm your Festival and Program Coordinator. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. I won't take too much of it, but I have a lot of very exciting things I want to tell you about. Our Arts in the Park program this year is going to happen from Friday, April 29th through Sunday, May 8th. It's a 10-day arts festival with events happening all over town. This year's theme for our festival is called Cultural Roots. So what we want to do is highlight and celebrate art and culture at its roots. And hopefully our goal here that we will accomplish is to honor how we are more the same at our roots, especially our artistic roots, more the same than we are different. We're going to try and include as many cultural elements of citizens of Arkansas as we possibly can. Charlie has been doing a great job. He's coordinated all the music for our festival, and it is fantastic. We're so excited. I just want to mention a few other things in our program, and then I'll let Charlie talk all about the music. We're going to start off on April 23rd, actually before the festival. We're having a fundraiser called Hot Seats and Hot Springs, and this is a festival a fundraiser we brought back that we started in 2005. And what we've done is we've commissioned an artist to handcraft 15 Adirondack chairs out of Arkansas cypress. And then we put a call for artists out, and we have 15 artists that have uniquely and individually painted these chairs. So what we've done here is we've recreated this sort of heirloom art that we had back in 2005, and then we're going to auction it off. So we're going to have these heirloom pieces by Arkansas artists that you can pass down for generations. They've all been treated, they're ready for outside, and they are gorgeous. You can find them on our Facebook page. Also at this fundraiser, we are going to be celebrating our arts ambassador, Miss Sunny Evans, and she has been an avid supporter of the arts. So if you are a fan of hers, please come grab a ticket on our website and come join us. Now the first program for our Arts in the Park Festival will be opening on Friday the 29th. It's called Art Moves. It's an outdoor art exhibition with 15 recreations of art that we have commissioned that gets reproduced onto 30 by 40 panels, and you walk the 3/4 of a mile at the Hot Springs Creek Greenway Trail, and you can see the art in nature. And there's little QR codes you just scan with your camera on your phone, and it'll tell you all about the art and the artist and everything you need to know. Something very exciting that we're having this year is a Mike Disfarmer photography exhibit at the Hot Springs Convention Center. If you're not familiar with his work, he is a very iconic portraitist from Heber Springs, Arkansas. And he has this way of using light and shadow, and he captures sort of like the depth of his subject's soul. And he's just very unique, one of a kind portraitist that a lot of people have tried to mimic his style, and it's great. We're going to have 30 pieces of his work up at the convention center. It is free and open to the public, and it'll be there throughout the summer. Our Art Springs program is the first weekend of Arts in the Park. We're just going to have so much stuff. This is where Charlie's coordinating most of the music. We will have our kids' chalk walk competition. We have the Renaissance Fair. We have a free book giveaway for kids with an hour story time on the hour every hour. We're having some artists called the Chalk Twins come in, and they do that like really crazy chalk art on the ground that looks super realistic, and it's very interactive and like to talk to you and participate with you. Then through the week, we have virtual cooking with Andrew Disney. He is the executive chef of The Vault, and he's going to do Southern cooking with a twist, and that is a virtual event. So you just sign up, and then we give you your list of ingredients, and then you cook from your home live, and you can stop and ask any questions, and it's really fun, and it's a signature cocktail involved, and it's great. At the library here, we have some very exciting things. I've been working with Paul on this. We have Donna Donahoe, a local artist who's doing a 2-day workshop teaching coil weaving baskets. Donna is a master at this art. Her baskets are amazing. So what you'll do is it's a Monday and a Tuesday. You'll sign up on our website, do the program. You take your stuff home with you Monday night. Then you work on it, you get frustrated, and then you come back on Tuesday and ask all your questions, and she'll fix it, and then you go home with this amazing basket. Library is also doing Local Authors Day. They're still taking sign-ups. I'm sure Paul has talked about this, so I won't go into too much detail. We also have Amy Hoyt of Hickory Hill Quilts. She is going to be here at the library discussing the history and fundamentals of quilting. She'll have some old machines and talk about quilting through the ages and how it's transformed, and how it's not just, your grandma's quilting anymore. They don't use machines, they use computers, and they're beyond me. I don't know how they do it. We have Holly Seamer, who does a program called All Things Fiber, and she's going to be doing inspirations in wearable art. And then something we just added that I'm very excited about, Jerry Butler is going to do the first annual Mother's Day Story Fest on Mother's Day here at the library with some guest speakers, and then he's just going to open it up and let people come up and talk about their mamas and tell her story. And give your mom a shout out and a thanks. Just moving on to close out our festival, we're going to be doing our gallery walk, which will be the first Friday in May. Studio tours, which is one of our most wildly popular programs, where the local artists open up their studio space and we print out a map and you go around town and you go check out how they make their art, and it's really fun and they love talking about it, so you can ask them anything and they love sharing. We have IBLA coming to town, if you're not familiar with it. They are a international music program that plays Carnegie Hall, the Tokyo Opera House, the Lincoln Center. They're coming here in partnership with the Muses and the Music Festival, and they're putting on a free performance of their show. I believe that's going to be Saturday evening, May 7th, at the Muses Center, and that's kind of another one-of-a-kind opportunity here. And I think that's all of our events for right now, and then Charlie has coordinated a whole bunch of folk-themed music for our Art Springs Art Springs stage at Art Springs.
Okay. Stick around. We do, and I'll just briefly, in fact, one of the artists is in the room tonight. The person who will be performing at the Greenway during the walk at the Greenway, Ken Tillery. Ken, would you wave? He's one of the most talented guitar players, and he focuses on pre-1930s guitar playing. Just relaxing, and that's why he was chosen, is to give you that relaxed feeling as you walk down the Greenway and enjoy all the sculpture. He will also be performing at the Adair Park on Sunday. Is that right? Saturday or Sunday. There will be a schedule coming out. And we have a lot of folks, and I'm gonna go real quickly. On the main stage, we have a group from Mountain View. Keith Samanovich is a professional dancer, dance teacher, and he's here to teach you guys how to jig dance. It's kind of like clogging, but it's you're self-interpretive, and he's a great teacher. And backing him up and providing a concert is Meemaw and the Squirrel Chasers. Where did they, yeah, that's one thing about old time music. We drag up some of the weirdest names and titles. There's a few songs out like Shove the Pig's Foot Further in the Fire, Nail the Catfish to the Tree. And a pig's foot is actually a blacksmithing tool, not a pig, for you animal lovers. But I guess a catfish is a catfish, and nail him to the tree, and it goes on and on. And I think that's one of the joys of this old time music, is a lot of it is lighthearted, and I think this festival comes at a really good time in our current history, in that we're going to be looking at a lot of things from a simpler time. And I don't mean an easier time, and it was a hard time, but it was a simpler time, and people had a different perspective of life than we do today. And I think it's nice to recognize our ancestors, our grandfathers, great-grandfathers on down the line, that really struggled so that we would have the opportunity to enjoy life today. Now that we may have gotten to a point where we're kind of messing it up, but I'm not sure about that. I won't go anywhere close to that. Let's see, that is Meemaw and the Squirrel Chasers. That band is made up of the mother, Crystal McCool, the dad, Jackie McCool. Lily Ann McCool is the national banjo champion and is from Mountain View, Arkansas. She's the banjoist there. She's 18 years old. And if you've seen her there, if you've been to the folk center and seen her, you'd see smoke coming out of her banjo. And also Mary Parker, who is a 10-time state champion, and 17 years old. Now tell me how that works out. She's multiple states is how she does that, plus different categories, but she is a remarkable fiddle player. So that foursome and Keith are going to put on a great show. It'll start at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, April 29th, and you'll be seeing these schedules come out. Make a long story short, you need to just set aside all of Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon to come down to Hill Wheatley Plaza, bring your dancing shoes, Y'all, most of you have those on already. Good. Anyway, bring your dancing shoes. There's going to be beer and wine served. It's family friendly, big time family friendly. So bring the kids. There's going to be a lot of kids activities going on. And just a couple of others that are going to be playing down there. Our feature band that night is Sad Daddy, Ryan Martin, who's a Hot Springs favorite. He draws a crowd, and he's going to draw a really big crowd this year. Before he plays, the Arkansas Highlands String Band will play an introductory part. There's 4 in that group. 3 of those 4 are really good. That last 4 guy in that band, I wouldn't say much about him. Okay, Rough and Ready. I know I'm getting off topic, but Rough and Ready is a old-time string band from southeast Arkansas. Terry, excuse me. I have lines I have to stay in here. From southeast Arkansas, and I've been looking for the music in the mountains, and this is over in the Delta, and he's been playing for years and has learned from a guy that was born in the late 1800s, and so Rough and Ready will be performing Sunday at noon on the big stage downtown. Let's see, Rico Donovan, I see him back there. He's scheduled to play on the big stage on Sunday. Who else? Let's see, Charlie Mank, who is not here. He's moved here from Mountain View, plays dulcimer. He will be playing at the photography event, right, and he's playing there. And let's see, Laura Lee Willard, a folk singer locally, will also be playing at Adair Park on Saturday and Sunday. Okay, any questions? Again, yes, sir.
How come no Jeff Johnson playing Saul, man?
Oh, well, I don't know. That's a good question. If he shows up, maybe I can
No,
find a
he won't
spot.
show up. You'll have to invite him. That's Burton Frank's son, Burton and Bertie Johnson from Rackensack. So.
Oh, okay. We are, in fact, one of the fiddler for the Arkansas Highlands String Band is going to be Denise Hurd, who is kind of the lead fiddler for Rackensack. We try to coordinate all of this with the very few folks around that are preserving this music. Okay. Any other questions or comments? One other comment. Bill, would you just raise your hand here? Is that Bill? Bill came up to me a while ago. He just moved to Hot Springs Village, saw the thing in the paper, and he's another old-time fanatic, if you want to call us that. And so we're glad to welcome him. But now let's get on with the program. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I'm too close to the camera. Is it cutting off my face?
It was.
Good. Okay, kind of like that. How's that? Okay. We want people to continue watching, so stay away from that. Okay, we're going to have some music, and I know you've been looking forward to that. Here's my banjo. It's actually, banjos are rarely in tune. I think that they may be in tune. It is, yeah. I'm not going to play it, though. Okay. Let's talk about where this all started. In 2017, or 2016, when I retired, I decided I want to do something I've never done before. And I thought I'd pick an instrument that would probably be easy. Guitar had 6 strings. Ukulele had 4. That's probably too easy. So the banjo has 5. I thought, well, that ought to be pretty easy. It may be for some folks. It certainly is not for me. So, but my curiosity moved over to the history of old-time music. And I went to Mountain View with a bluegrass banjo ready to play like Earl Scruggs and heard a group off playing old-time music. And I've not looked back. I came back, sold my bluegrass banjo, bought an open-back banjo, and have loved not only the music, but the tradition and the sacrifices that the folks made, because this was intimate music. It was homemade music. It was music before we had any recordings or any radio. If you had music, it was made by old-time folks playing on the porch, in the holler, and inviting everybody around. So there's a lot of history there, and that's back to where very little of it is represented in the Ouachita Mountains. Now I'm getting into a little bit of history finally. There was if you Google music in the Ouachita Mountains, you will come up with one honors paper, and it's by a lady, her name is Miss Sessler. She wrote it in 1997, at Ouachita Baptist University. And I've got just a couple of quotes that I thought were important to understand what she found in 1997. Number one, and this goes for 67 pages, so we're going to be here a while. I began this project very hopeful and relatively naive. Me too. The Ouachitas must be an undisturbed gold mine of folk music. Okay. Further down, in the process of research, I was often discouraged. First, sources were meager. The only written records of primitive folk music in the Ouachitas revolved around Emma Dusenberry. Terry has put on programs about Emma Dusenberry. Okay. I like to be close to you guys. Okay, Emma Dusenberry grew up in poverty. Her daughter was blind. They lived in a cardboard cabin practically. I mean, it was very meager in Rocky, Arkansas, which is 8 or 10 miles outside of Mena. She finally was discovered by, I believe, Vance Randolph, who is a song catcher, went around to try to find these folks and recorded her. She's one of the most recorded ballad singers in the Library of Congress archives. The sad part is that some folks who recorded her and brought her to Little Rock to sing on the state capitol steps had promised that they were going to make her life a little better. And as soon as she got back, nobody called again. So there's a little bit of sad thing there. But Emma Dusenberry is referred to as a ballad singer in the southern Ozarks. Okay? So my theory is that the song catchers and some of the New York and the East Coast writers, number one, they couldn't pronounce Ouachita, and number two, they couldn't spell it unless they spelled it W-A-S-H-I-T-A. And so they just said, well, it's the southern Ozarks. And so that's that part. Okay. I found nothing that actually set Ouachita music apart from the Ozark music. Because the Ouachitas, this is important, because the Ouachitas opened up to the outside world, transportation, things like that, earlier than the Ozarks, and became so with recordings before that, I never discover any differences in the two. Anyone who might have possessed the elusive evidence I needed died years before I started this project. And this was in 1997. So we're at a disadvantage now because that many more folks have passed away. Third, I didn't come across any young people interested in old time music. And I'm going to come back to these in a minute. But I discovered that the fact that folk music was hardly collected in the Ouachitas did not mean it was not here. In fact, it was probably so common that no one thought it remarkable enough to write about. I think that's kind of key. In pursuing this history and letting that kind of be the groundwork for not being able to find anything, I met with actually Terry and Paul and Aaron and Mary Zunick one time to talk about if we couldn't do something together to pursue my interest. And we formed the Arkansas Highlands Folk Project. And that name, we had a lot of different thoughts, but that name has turned out to be very valuable. I mean, when I call somebody and say I'm working with the library on the Arkansas Highlands Folk Project, it's almost like saying I'm with the Library of Congress. It has opened more doors, and that's what I've started doing now. I did well, let me get back to that. Once we started with that project for the library, since then, and y'all know some of this, we've had over 8 live concerts, either here or sponsored by the library. We've had them at Hot Springs Village. We had one in Sheridan. We've had the food truck concert, and then 2 in this room before we were canceled because of COVID. We've had 7 or 8 streaming programs where we didn't have live music, but we had permission from various musicians actually around the world to use videos of them playing to demonstrate the old time music. One from the Netherlands is called the Old Time String Band. And then we had North Carolina's PBS producers allowed us to use any of their program that we wanted to further the preservation of this, and we're gonna see one of those in just a minute. And what else have we done? Oh, anything else?
The Red Light Roastery.
I'm sorry?
The Red Light Roastery.
The Red Light Roastery event where we brought in a person that was on their way to Mountain View, and we were able to afford that band because they would just stop over here. That was our first event. Yes, it was at Red Light Roastery Coffee House. And that's kind of what gave us the confidence that, yes, there is an interest in this, and we want to continue doing it. And you guys being here today kind of reinforces that. Let's see. Back to Miss Sessler's thing. What I have found, though, where she was talking about being frustrated, I think I've been frustrated, but there is a gold mine in the Ouachitas, and it's come up just over the last couple of months. We've been Googling and calling the University of Arkansas to try to find out some things from their archives, which are not digitized, not completely digitized, is really hard. So I just, in the 1st of December, I lit out, and Barbara let me leave for a few days, and I started out and went to Mount Ida and met Barry Mickey, who shared the program with Liz in last month, where we had both of them on our library program.
Not Mickey Berry. So not Mickey Berry.
Yeah, not Mickey Berry, Barry Mickey. And we found, he put us on to this lady who grew up in Mount Ida. And she was born in 1916. She's 105. You may have seen the program that we presented a month or so ago. 105-year-old fiddler. So that was my goal, is I wanted to go up to Yaleville, where she lives now. And actually, as that moment, she's still living alone. Her daughters come by, 105. And I spent 2.5, 3 hours with her, recorded some of it, had it on the show. Remarkable lady. I mean, Barbara, actually, I think Barbara thought there was something going on, because about a month later, I decided I want to go back to see this Hensley. And so we arranged to go back up there, and I got some more recorded information, and she is remarkable. I mean, just her memory of the songs, and the thing to take away is the songs that she remembers playing with her dad in Mount Ida are the same songs that we play in Mount Ida. And the few of us, Jim Larkin over here, Hugh Donahoe, who's not here, have started getting together periodically, learning these old songs as well. But it's the same music. A little different take, and you go from one point to the other, but it's also the same music that originated in the Appalachians in the mid to late 1700s, which mostly came from the British Isles with the influence of African Americans. Banjo is an African instrument. The guitar didn't come until the mid to late 1800s. The fiddle, however, was small enough and light enough, it can come over on the original boat. So when Jamestown was settled in 1607, there were some fiddles on there. Okay? In 1617, the first group of slaves arrived at Jamestown by accident. Actually, they were running out of food and didn't know where they were and landed there. And there were 50 slaves there. So if you picture that, they may not have had the banjo, but they could have created one from boards and sticks and things like that. But I can just almost picture the fiddle players over on this side of the camp and the African Americans on the other side, because no matter how hard times were, no how desperate people were, music was a release. Music was their therapy. And I can hear these two, hey, what's that over there? Hey, what's that over there? And eventually, long after that, the African American syncopation linked in with some of the Irish and Scottish songs, and that's what makes old time music. Okay, not many young people. Well, if you'll show up at this event next week, you're going to see some young people playing the dickens out of these old time songs. So try to do that. And finally, the fact that it was so common, now that's what I found out now. Guy from Monticello calls me and says, I'm an old time player and I want to come up and learn more about what y'all are doing. Where did you even hear about it? And she's, well, somebody in Louisiana. has heard y'all's program on the library and called me to tell me I needed to get involved. So this thing is really reaching out to a lot of folks, I should just stand back here, shouldn't I? Would that work? No. But anyway, the traditional music is what we're all about. Let's see if I've missed anything, because I want to give y'all some examples, and yes, we're right on time. Questions, comments. I'd love to have a hard question. No, I'd love to have a question.
Are you gonna play something?
That's not a question. That's out of the question.
I got one for you.
Okay.
Could you describe the morphing, perhaps pick a single tune and describe how it morphed from the British Isles through the Appalachians to arrive in Arkansas? What changes occurred in that one tune?
Yeah, to briefly, I think one of the oldest tunes is Barbara Ellen. And I think they have tracked it back into probably the 1500s or so. And it's still played. It's a sad song, but it's one that came over, and it's played in Mountain View. It's not one of the most popular ones that we play, but in so many of these tunes, they may have changed the name. I mean, the Catfish Nailed to a Tree may have actually originated as another tune, and its name was changed. But the actual tunes, and there's not thousands, probably tens of thousands of these old-time tunes out there. And Jim Larkin and I and Ken and several in the town are trying to learn those. And Bill, you're going to start learning them soon. But that, almost all the tunes that we're playing that originated there and made their way to the Appalachians. Then they made their way to West Virginia, and then they made their way to Kentucky and eastern Tennessee. A little bit of variation, and the musicians can tell exactly if it was their music or not. Most of us, it's the same tune and it sounds about the same, but there are distinctions between those. Let's see. Oh, I'm knocking on doors. Okay, I went to Mena, met a person at the genealogy place. I'm gonna get back with her. Went to Bearden, went to a genealogy place, and they had volumes of 3-ring binders with clippings and news items going back to the late 1800s about music contests and fiddlers and all kind of stuff. And that's another trip. Jim Larkin here from Fox Pass Pottery has met some folks out.
That's you.
It's me.
You're rubbing against
Oh,
it.
thank you. I thought we were under attack. Okay. Jim Larkin and I are going to take a road trip. He's met some folks during his career as a master potter out in the western part of the state who have acknowledged that they know this stuff. And so Jim and I are going to hit the road and go down to Langley, and a couple of other spots that he knows folks, and try to do some interviews and find out more. So we may be bringing some more back to you. Highlands, Arkansas. I went up there after Deary, the writer, had the article a month or so ago about the schoolhouse that still exists up there. And I went up, found the school, and it's remarkable. Doors are open. The desks are still there. It's not vandalized. It's old, but it's just a really peaceful place. And I ran across the Hawk Cemetery, and there were some numbers on there that you could call folks if you wanted to be buried there, which I wasn't interested in that. But I did call one of the numbers of a lady that was last name Hawk, and she was thrilled that I called. And after she finally figured out I was not a telemarketer, we had a nice conversation. And she wants me to come out and record her. And she said that if you don't do this, I'm 84 years old. If you don't do this, when I'm gone, nobody will know about this. And we need for folks to know about it. So that's on my list of things to do too. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's get to some music. That's probably what you came for. The music, I call it old time, homemade, traditional. Some other people, if someone in one of these videos is going to call it something else. But there's always an issue of what is bluegrass? Why is bluegrass different than old time? And some people actually think bluegrass is really old, and bluegrass is not old at all. It came about when basically Earl Scruggs, Flatten Scruggs, and Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe really started, and that's when music became commercial, and you would make a living doing it. Old time music was never intended to make a living. It was to entertain, and it was intimate, and it was to have a good time. So if we could dim the lights, and do you want me to go back and dim the lights? I can do that. Oh, the first presentation is a good explanation of the difference between old time. And believe it or not, the best explanation I could find is from a guy named Chris Hay. He lives in South Yorkshire, England. And he has the fiddle channel, so the accent's there, but it's probably one of the better presentations on distinguishing the music. This lasts about 8 minutes, and I think you'll find it worth the 8 minutes. If anybody starts dozing off, I have a yardstick, I think, up here that I can tap you on the shoulder.
Use the banjo.
Oh, that's deadly, yeah. Is there audio on?
It was.
Yeah. Okay. In the meantime, I'm not gonna play, this is a 5-string banjo. And one thing about old time music versus bluegrass, typically bluegrass plays in the key of G, which this is in. Old time changes the tunings really.
Keep stalling.
Bluegrass plays in the key of G. Old time changes the tunings to get the feel for the song or the tune they want. And some people that play blues, you can play the songs in G, but they don't sound like if you're tuning to C or D. And usually we play in either C, D, or G. Again, the bluegrass banjo is made for concerts, so it has a resonator on the back where it amplifies the sound and it goes out to the audience. Open back banjos are a little bit quieter. Bluegrass typically is up picking with their fingers, and they kind of have a roll. Old time.
What's the real difference between old time and bluegrass? This question is often asked, and it usually gets a fairly short, trite answer, including the name of Bill Monroe and the date of 1945. However, by delving deeper into the similarities and differences between these two related musical forms, we can learn a great deal about both and flag up some surprising traits which go to the very heart of the musician's character and motivation. To the general public, the terms old time and bluegrass are pretty well synonymous. Old American music involving banjos, fiddles, possibly some cowboy hats. Lively, honest, down-home music representing the good old days before mortgages, computers, and 6-lane highways. The most common misconception is that bluegrass is as old as the hills. So much so that when I was writing the bluegrass chapter of the Fiddle Handbook, my editor refused point blank to believe that bluegrass was in fact younger than the atomic bomb, and I ended up having to sidestep the question. So first of all, let's talk about history. Old-time music started with the first settlers who brought instruments from England, Ireland, and Scotland in the 17th century. Many of them took to the hills, ending up in the Appalachian Mountains, living in small, isolated communities, where, by the same process described by Darwin and his finches, the music began to diverge from its transatlantic origins, gradually becoming distinctly American, despite maintaining many of the original song, tune, and dance forms. African-American musicians had a particularly strong influence in reshaping the music, bringing the ancestor of the banjo from Africa, adding a strong element of syncopation, and bringing the expressivity and fluidity of blue notes to old time. Music was unself-conscious and practical, with musicians playing for dancers, for communal events, and for their own enjoyment. Few musicians would have been professional, and there was no particular name for the music. Things changed slowly until the birth of the recording industry in the early 1920s, when suddenly a commercial and marketing element became involved. The music now evolved rapidly as record companies searched frantically for new artists, new songs, and new formats. One of the first problems to be dealt with was what to call this music. The term most widely used within the industry was hillbilly, which came in some powerfully negative connotations, as shown by this definition from Variety magazine in 1926. The hillbilly is a North Carolina or Tennessee and adjacent mountaineer type of illiterate white. Theirs is a community all to themselves, illiterate and ignorant, with the intelligence of morons. Clearly, as a marketing term, this would leave something to be desired. In a rare display of sensitivity, they decided that what was needed was some term that showed respect towards the sense of history, continuity, and old-fashioned values which this music appeared to represent. Among the terms tried out were old-fashioned, old familiar, hill country, and old time. This then was old time music, but we can already see that to define the music in terms of record company marketing from the late 20s and early 30s is problematic. Commercially recorded old time music represents just a fraction, and arguably a very unrepresentative fraction, of the entirety of centuries of musical history. Fiddle and banjo were the key instruments, but guitar, mandolin, bass, alto harp, and a selection of other instruments was also common. As a style, old time was loose and diverse and could range anywhere between a solo fiddle and a string band with vocals. In contrast to this broad and rather vague collection of musical groupings, gradually changing over centuries, bluegrass is far more specific in its origins and definition. It was a significant step in the evolution of old-time music, specifically a very commercially orientated vision of mandolinist singer Bill Monroe. He was one of the countless rural Southerners who left home in the Depression years to seek work in the towns and cities. He was eager to make a name for himself in music. Key to the new sound was the banjo of 21-year-old Earl Scruggs from North Carolina. This was no ordinary banjo player. Scruggs had perfected a style of three-finger picking, which allowed him to combine a high-speed rolling rhythm with melody, producing one melody note out of every three. Old-time players had used open-backed instruments and used a right-hand technique known as frailing or claw hammer, with the fingers brushing down on the strings. Bluegrass banjo players in the Scruggs style use instruments with a resonator at the back and play harder, louder, and faster. For old-time instrumentalists, there are many detailed features of the music which are valued for their archaic quality, which set them deliberately aside from modern commercial musical norms. Crookedness, for example, where odd beats or bar lengths occur in a tune, are treasured instead of being ironed out. Neutral notes, precious leftover from before the tempered scale was introduced, are not merely tolerated but valued by fiddle players. Use of cross-tuning or scordatura, anathema to any bluegrass player, is almost universal among old-time fiddle players, and modal tunes remain popular. Difficult keys such as E and B, common in bluegrass, are rarely heard, and most tunes will be in G, D, or A. For fiddlers, bowing is rhythmic, with lots of shuffles and syncopations, and many separate bows. By contrast, for bluegrass fiddlers, smoothness is paramount, with lots of long bows and slurs. Old-time fiddlers rarely go above first position, while bluegrass players are expected to play freely up and down the neck. There's also a much greater stress on clear tone and smooth vibrato in bluegrass, while in old time a rougher, more down-home sound is often more appropriate. There's a tendency to think, and I have to admit being guilty of this myself, that old time is simply easier than bluegrass, but that betrays an ignorance of the true essence of old time music. I put this to Tatiana Hargreaves, an outstanding young fiddler who straddles both camps, and she told me, "It's very much an oversimplification to consider old time fiddle easier than bluegrass. There are so many nuances to both styles. A lot of bluegrass fiddlers don't have the drive and the groove that old time fiddlers have, and that's equally as challenging as the virtuosity of bluegrass playing." Both bluegrass and old time are participatory as well as spectator sports. For every professional player, there's a host of amateur pickers happy to travel across the country, watch some performances, take a few classes, and then spend countless hours in jam sessions. It's probably here at the grassroots, largely free from commercial pressure, that we can get the clearest idea of the true nature of the two styles. The nature of jam sessions is very instructive when it comes to differentiating between old time and bluegrass. A bluegrass jam is about strutting and stuff. Everyone except bass players is expected to, or at least encouraged to, take solos, either for a turnaround and instrumental or between verses of a song. The song or tune is a vehicle for self-expression and improvisation. Fiddlers in particular have to master a number of different roles within a band or session, alternating between rhythm or filling in between vocal lines, and always being alert for the opportunity of stepping forward to take solos. Musicians will hungrily watch one another, eager to pick up a new hot lick they can use themselves. Players will often be standing into sessions as if ready to hop on a stage at the first opportunity and perhaps break into the Orange Blossom Special, the ultimate bluegrass fiddler's ego trip. An old-time jam might be from another planet. The musicians usually sit down to play and have stamina, happy to go around the same tune for 20 minutes without a solo in sight, enjoy the groove, the minute variations and shared experience. The tempos are slower than in bluegrass, determined by what a dancer would prefer rather than what would excite an audience. Fiddler Tommy Jarrell once described a tune as being a circle with neither a beginning nor an end. Old-time players at a session are virtually in a trance, and not a one would jump on the stage if it was offered to them. The session will stick to the same key for up to an hour, enabling fiddlers and banjo players to use the same tuning before eventually taking a break while everyone retunes to a different key. Again, I talked to Tatiana Hargreaves about the difference she sees. Playing old-time tunes feels more internal to me. My body is softer and more relaxed, whereas in a bluegrass context, my body tends to be more upright as I think about projecting and pushing the sound forward. Old time is essentially folk music, with all the timeless values of community and tradition, each performer just a link in an endless chain. Like the Olympics was intended to be, old time is about the taking part, not the winning, and not everyone has to be a virtuoso. At the grassroots, the musicians may dress just as informally as the old timers, but on the concert stage, you see sharp suits and polished boots. Focus, technique, ambition, and competition are at the core of bluegrass today, just as they were when Bill Monroe first took to the opera stage with his startling new lineup back in 1945.
Okay. We can leave the lights off. We're going to start another video in just a second. You didn't know you were going to get a theory course, a music theory course on old-time music today, but you probably know more than 99% of the population about old-time and bluegrass music now. Let's move right on to the next one. This is the African-American influence. David Holt with the PBS program, The State of the Music, is interviewing Rihanna Giddings, and I think you'll enjoy it. It really emphasizes the importance that the African-Americans brought to our heritage music.
What gives Southern music its distinctive sound is the blending of music from the British Isles with the music of Africa. Now that began to evolve in the 1800s in the South and has affected American music ever since. Black string bands featuring banjo and fiddle have been playing in the South since before the Civil War. The Thompson brothers from Mebane, North Carolina, carried on that tradition in the 21st century. Luckily for us, a group of young black musicians was inspired by the Thompsons and started the Carolina Chocolate Drops. The group has been wildly successful due in large part to the talents of Rihanna Giddens, a singer, banjo player, and fiddler. Today, I'm meeting Rhiannon here at the historic Horn Creek Farm in Pinnacle, North Carolina. You know, I think most people think of the banjo as the classic American instrument. Tell us about it coming from Africa.
Well, there's a lot of string instruments, lute instruments in West Africa, and so when Africans came over to the Americas, they brought the instruments with the memory of the instruments with them. And in the Caribbean in particular, that was the first sort of meshing of Anglo and Celtic and African sort of cultures, music, and dance. And so the instrument that sort of came out of that synchronization, we now call the banjo, and it traveled up to North America with the slaves and became, a well-known, plantation instrument. So the first 100 years of its existence in the Americas, it was known as a black instrument, and that's how people considered it.
And then how did it get into the white community?
Well, in the 1840s and 50s, some entertainers started to look at the banjo. It's pretty cool. One particular Joel Sweeney, which we know as maybe he wasn't the first white man ever, but he was the first that we know of to pick it up. He made some changes to it, whereas instruments before would have been more handmade, sort of gourd type instruments. He made some changes to it, and also his colleagues, one thing being the wooden rim, and so they started to take the banjo out, performing with it all over the country. They went to the UK, they went to Australia, they went to Europe, and
Spread it around.
yeah, they did. It was the first really American cultural export, like 100 years before rock and roll. And one of the reasons why we don't talk about this is because they were doing it in blackface. It's part of the minstrel show. And that's, for various reasons, that's a really hard thing for us to talk about. There's a lot of negativity that goes along with that. But you also have to look at the fact that it was the most popular form of entertainment in America for over 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at the root of our culture, music, dance,
What
just
started Broadway?
it started everything, syncopation.
There really was not much syncopation in American music. Give us a little example of something. I'll play the bones.
Yes, this was originally published in 1855, the very first banjo tune called the Briggs Banjo Instrumentals. This is a little piece from
Yeah, that's great. The other thing that's, I think, interesting about the minstrel shows is that's actually how black performers started getting into show business.
Yeah, I mean, after emancipation, that was the only way that they could be entertained was to actually blacken up, to put on blackface. Sometimes the blackface was lighter than their actual skin tone, but that was the only way that they could get into the entertainment industry. And that was a really great industry for a lot of African Americans because of just if you had ability, you could get into it. As long as you blacked it up, you could do it instead of so many of the other things that are sort of closed to them. So that was definitely a way to make a living.
And when white people actually saw black people performing and saw how talented they were, they just wanted to see more.
Yeah, I mean that was where I think the blackface minstrel show started to kind of go downhill. Is that people started, you could see it in the press at the time. People started going, why are there white folks being in blackface and there's actually these black performers doing, but then in the black community, the blackface minstrel show sort of, it was subverted, and some of the comedy that comes out of that. I mean, when that's your only outlet, and it's such a sort of negative thing, you have to sort of turn it to you have to turn it, or otherwise you can't survive. So some of the black humor and some of the oldest things in black entertainment come out of that sort of subversion of the minstrel show. So it's extremely important to talk about. Just like you said, that's what you said. But no chocolate in my bread. Just like you said, that's what you said. But no chocolate in my bread. Just what you said, that's what you said. Don't you let your woman have a way. If she has her way, she will go sick all day. Don't let your woman have a way.
Okay. Rihanna has gone on to actually be an opera singer in New York as well as an old-time musician. She's a remarkable young lady. Let's go right on into this next one. And if any of y'all need to leave, I understand. I've got a home, I just want to show an example of what a home concert looks like. And a fellow named David Bunn, actually he owns an avocado and citrus farm in the wine area of California. He has a ranch where all this goes. Apparently he has a pretty good sized living room because he brings in old time musicians to show their stuff. And this is a young group called the Onlys, and they're just, I don't know how else to put it. They're really good, but they're just cute. They're fun to watch. So if we could do that one now, that's the one that was on the email, right? Okay, let's look at that one. Before you hit it, it's going, go ahead. Now this is an important part of old time music, is you have to watch these people change their tunings. As I mentioned a while ago, when old time changes tunings to get the song. So I actually I left this in here so you could kind of see the dynamics of what goes on behind the scenes, if you care.
Does anybody have any questions at this point in our program?
long you got? We got 9. This one is, Sammy went to go get a new fiddle when we were like maybe 10, and I was trying to get fiddles too, and she tried this one out and almost got it, and she named it, in that like, process, she named it Moldy. So this is an old 1800s German violin in the States. Old.
It looks a little funny. This is a fiddle from 1926. Is it Ninja? And the violin makers who stopped on it. So, yeah. I had it since I was 6. So. This is a 1949 35 card that I got from my dad from him in a gem shop. And, yeah.
On behalf of
Sorry? No, it doesn't have a name.
On behalf of his dad, we should say that it's still his.
Yeah, long-term loan.
This is Garland County, and it's made, recently I got a map.
Yeah, that's right. Right, so Gary Palmer.
Yes. Oh.
You can turn the lights back up too. I think we've just about run out of time, but I want to thank you, those of you all of y'all who stuck around. Hope you enjoyed this. Now, before we go, though, questions or comments or anything you observed there that you'd like a little clarification on?
What are those little things here? Yeah.
Bones, they're called bones. And again, old time music, they didn't, if they had an instrument, most times they had to make it. And they're actually rib bone from a cow or a large animal. And they're very rhythmic and they have different tones. And you'll find some that'll have one set of bones. Well, like, banjos, every banjo is a little different. You heard the one that Brianna was playing. Beautiful, that kind of a baritone tone. And this one has a different tone, and I have another one that has a totally different tone. And the way you play it does too. Good question. Thank you. I wish I had something to give you to reward you for that question.
Just don't leave me a pickle.
Okay.
I only saw one percussion instrument in one of the circles I saw while we're in, but it came to mind, the dancing mannequin on the stick. I put one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great percussion instrument, and that was part of the old time.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing I'd like to comment, if you're ever in Southern Virginia, there's a little town there called Floyd. And Floyd is much like Mountain View. They'll have music on Friday and Saturday in the middle of town. But that's the intersection of the old crooked road, which highway signs are banjos. And that's where a lot of the bluegrass players actually grew up in that area, along that road. Well, it also intersects with the Blue Ridge Parkway, just east of Floyd, about 8 miles. And just to the south of there, the North Carolina line, is it's a federal museum, and it's got an auditorium, and then it's got the museum with the Carter family's instruments and everything. Well, there's a breezeway, and on Sundays they have a old time music jam, and there'll be a big circle of folks, and they're very welcoming. So if any of you in that area that play, you might want to stop in Floyd and check it out.
It's great. The Floyd Country Store, every Friday night, they have and a lot of it, they do have bluegrass, but they are trying to maintain, like all of us, They're trying to maintain the old time, but old time players are a little different than bluegrass players. They are a little more reserved. I'm unusual that I'm an old time enthusiast and willing to sit up here and talk about it. Most of them, it's all about the music and having a good time with an intimate group that they want to play with. But to me, again, it's too valuable an asset for us to overlook. And especially, all right, take two. All right, it's too valuable an asset for us not to recognize. And at some point, there is a revival. You saw those young people. You'll see some young people at our group. There's tons of younger people who are saying, I don't have to make $1 million. I want to do something I really enjoy and that I feel good about. And there's a lot of messaging that comes out of this music about values and ethics and a lot of comedy. And it's a feel-good, good time environment. And the people I meet with up in Mountain View to try to learn this stuff is really good. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to briefly make a comment about Rihanna Gibbons. A few years back, my wife and I were just visiting in Charleston, South Carolina. And we were just walking down the street and we walked by a theater and we noticed that night Rihanna Gibbons was there to do a concert. And we had heard about her with the Carolina Chocolate Drops, so we knew about her. And we went to this concert. And to make a long story short, during the concert, she herself played about 5 instruments. They had one set that was Carolina Chocolate Drop, Black Appalachian old time music. She did a second set that was Caribbean music, and she sang some of those songs in Caribbean Creole. She did a third set that was Celtic music, and she sang those in Gaelic. And she has also been declared a MacArthur Genius Award winner. And but she's just beyond incredible.
Thank you very much. Again, there's a lot more to her story than just what I showed. And there's a lot of folks out there like that because of the genre that we're dealing with, they're not in the top, they're not on the popular radio stations. I'd never be a TV personality. Okay, other questions or observations? Thank you very much.
Old time music, it's a lot more fun than it sounds.
And and there was one mention is you don't have to be really, really talented to be accepted. I've been playing for 5 years, and the people who I play with, since day one when I couldn't play, I didn't even know how to tune the thing. Oh, you're doing great. Yeah, just stick with it. And, and I've stuck with it. And I will be playing at Hill Wheatley Plaza at the end of the month. So if you want to hear, come down there. I'll come early, have a couple of beers, and I'll sound really, really good. Okay, yeah, Terry.
I wanted to comment, I think I've talked about this, that one of the differences I've seen between the Ozark folk music and the music I grew up with in the Ouachita Mountains, mainly around Garland and Montgomery County, is the Ozarks really emphasize instrumental music. Whereas we never had a song that I remember that we didn't have words to, that we'd sing, except maybe at a kitchen sweat or a square dance, And a lot of times you just have a harmonica and some kind of like the Bible, some instrument like that, especially kitchen sweats, which I went to several growing up. But anyway, I thought that was a difference. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that or not, but my folks never played a song that didn't have words to it.
That's a good point. And Miss Hensley, Violet Hensley, the 105-year-old, they played a lot of dances. And the difference is you don't typically sing during a square dance because the caller has to do it. But that was another thing about the music. It was not only, and it's participatory. Either you played an instrument, whether in the bones, the spoons, I call it the wash tub. My friend calls it the wash tub. It's a wash. I'm not a wash tub. Washboard, a washboard, and you had to improvise. Which again, I think that's a trait that we need to kind of refocus on. Is not not just relying on somebody else to provide us with stuff. We need to learn to do that. Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Charlie, what's your banjo's name?
What does it sound like? Barbara, what's my banjo's name? It may be named Damn It. I'm not sure, because a lot of times when I'm playing it, she'll hear me say, Damn it. Sometimes, maybe that's it. I don't know. And my wife, Barbara, right there has put up, the only thing worse than having somebody learn the banjo at home is the fiddle. Oh my gosh, you've got to have a strong marriage to have somebody learn the fiddle in your home. But, okay. Any other questions, comments? Y'all have been a great crowd. Thank you. Library, thank you. Appreciate it very much. News media, good Lord. Are you really? I think that this is from CBS.
That was so interesting, Charlie. Thank you so much. And we want to thank Paul Kagavine and the library for producing the show. Thank you so much. And we hope all of you will be back next month. Thank you.